Hey guys, what's up? I got a request not too long ago from one of you guys asking about tips on learning a new language. But I thought this was a really interesting request, and actually, because I've been spending so much of my time doing things like this, I thought I'd share it with you guys for any of you who might be learning another language too. So just to start off, before I give you any real tips, I'm just gonna say there are basically 4 aspects when you are learning a new language, 4 things you kind of need to make sure you cover. Reading, writing, speaking, and listening. These are all different aspects of the language, and if you work on them all pretty evenly, then you can kind of guess that your language learning is going to be pretty good and balanced. I also, as I'm learning the language, try to get a balance between structured and unstructured learning is kind of what I call it. Structured learning would be stuff like grammar, it would be lessons, reading posts about when you use this or when you use that, or doing vocabulary exercises, learning new vocabulary, kind of like a textbook. Unstructured learning would be stuff like music or movies where, they may even use their own language a little wrong sometimes. They might be kind of slang words in there, things that you wouldn't ever really find in a textbook, but it's a very important aspect of the language because it's actually how it's used. So my advice is from both of these categories, just 5 tips that help me as a language learner. We're all internet savvy here, so the first thing I recommend you do is find some blogs that are specifically made for the language learner. I haven't had any trouble with this with Spanish or French, but they're both very popular languages to learn as a second language. I would imagine though, with the internet how it is, I don't think you'll have any trouble finding a blog for really any language. So this could be something that's both structured or unstructured. You can find some blogs that have grammar posts and common mistakes types of posts where you can read and understand and learn. But also you can find some unstructured where they might have articles or things that maybe are set up for language learners still, so the language will be a little bit more catered to your particular level, but it's still more of a spoken way of using the language, and therefore that's a little more unstructured. The second advice I give you guys is listen to YouTubers. This is something you guys are obviously good at. You're here. And I find it's one of the most entertaining and relaxing ways that I can practice the language. This is completely listening and this is completely unstructured. In fact, YouTubers are probably about as accurate as your average speaker, which means that there are going to be mistakes. There are going to be a lot of slang words and phrases. It's not at all structured learning, it's completely unstructured, and that's wonderful because it gives you actual access to how the language is used. Of course, that also means that, especially if you're not fluent, you're probably gonna miss a lot of stuff. You may not even get half of what the YouTuber's talking about. But the joy of YouTube videos is that at the end, even if you didn't understand exactly what you just watched, you probably picked up some stuff and no one's gonna quiz you on it. It just gives you 4, 5, maybe 10 minutes of just listening to the rhythm and the structure of the language. And you'll find that as you start to progress in the language, as you start to pick up more, it feels really good to really actually be able to connect and understand these vloggers. The third tip I have is a little bit of a challenge. A lot of people know that listening to music is a good way to learn a language, or at least to sort of hear how the language is used, because music is another unstructured thing. There's often mistakes in it, they say things slightly differently when they sing them, etc. But to make this an extra challenge, try learning how to sing a song. Look up the lyrics, sit down with your headphones in, and listen to it over and over and try to sing with it. Bonus points if you can actually memorize the song and sing it and maybe even play guitar or piano with it or something. The fourth tip I have for you is to speak with native speakers. This is obviously really hard if you're not actually in a country where that language is spoken natively. What's great for us internet savvy people is that there are a lot of actually websites and places set up for this. So first of all, if you're not an English native speaker, for example, you could comment below and I'm gonna comment back to you. There's a bit of practice. And if you wanna go a step further than just commenting or tweeting, you can actually look for places online where you can meet other native speakers. A website that I like to use is mylanguageexchange.com. And no, this is not sponsored. I got no payment for this. This is just actually something that I use and I want to recommend to you guys. And this is a great way. I've met a lot of people that I have sort of online pen pals for email, for Skype, but this is really good for just practicing your own production of the language, even if it's not perfect, which it shouldn't be. If you're just talking with someone, don't worry about every single little thing needing to be perfect. Tip number 5 is find a series. Movies are helpful, movies are great, but even more than that, I find series tend to offer certain benefits that movies can't. For example, if you're not quite fluent in a language, it can be quite difficult to understand each individual person. Their way of speaking is a little different, their accent might be kind of different, and also in a movie, you often don't exactly know what to expect. When you watch a series though, after you've watched a few episodes, then you get used to the characters' accents, you get used to the way that they speak. You kind of get a feeling of how the show works, kind of the rhythm of the show. And of course, depending on how predictable the show is, you might actually be able to guess what's going to happen. Of course, in your own native language, this can be less fun, but when you're learning a language, it's so valuable because you get to actually use more of your brain to listen to the language itself, how the language is being used. And obviously, if you're getting close to fluent in a language, you need that little push, you need that challenge, because that's also an important aspect of learning the language. But if you have a lower level and you're having trouble picking up everything, and that can be kind of frustrating when you're watching something and you don't know what's happening. So I recommend finding a series and trying that. I don't want this video to go on forever and ever, so those are all the tips that I'm going to give you today. I hope this was helpful to you guys. Let me know in the comments if you're learning a language, what that language might be, and maybe what is your favorite thing to do to practice that language. And if you're practicing French or Spanish, or if your native language is French or Spanish, feel free to leave me comments in those languages too. I hope all of you guys are well, and I will see you in my next video.
Yo quiero estar contigo, vivir contigo, bailar contigo, tener contigo una noche loca, ay, besar tu boca.
I cannot tell you how good it felt when I actually learned like 75% of that song.